Hello guys, welcome to Liverpool FC Journal. I'm Owen James. This is your Liverpool news update, guys. We are on Saturday, the 3rd of December. Liverpool obviously play Sunday against Fulham at Craven Cottage. 2 away games back-to-back in the capital. We're looking for capital gains. Look, I'm going to reflect on what Arne Slot has said today. I think some really interesting stuff in what he came out with at his presser today. Some stuff that needs further investigation, and I'm going to try to stay as calm as possible about this, even though, when I've actually was going through the comments and actually making the slides for this video, I was actually quite enraged by some of it. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about what Unai Emery has said as well, about Harvey Elliott, and why this again has left me in a situation where it's neglect from Liverpool of our player. And he is still our player, as much as obviously he's away with Villa, he's a Villa player at this moment in time. Harvey Elliott still belongs, it's horrible to talk about this, but it still belongs to Liverpool. We'll talk a little bit about that as well in the video. Guys, phenomenal response to the videos in the last few days. We are growing very nicely. It's, small views at the moment. Obviously, we're not on the same level as other podcasts, but we do want to grow to those levels. So, look, I'd love to hit 100 subs by Sunday, 19 to go at time of recording. So please obviously help us with that. Obviously, if you've enjoyed the content, please obviously like, comment, share, and subscribe. We're going to really try and get as well going with the lives from next week as well. So the lives, podcasts. Look, when I podcast, excuse me the voice, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. When I do podcasts, I like to do them in terms of the fact that they involve you in the conversation. I'm not one of these people who just sits here, talks for an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, and ignores the live chat. I like to do it as a conversation, like people down the pub having a chat about the football, and that's the way I like to do it. So be welcoming for that. Look forward to getting you involved in that. And obviously, once we get up and running, channel hits 1,000 subs, we'll obviously get membership schemes and other things going as well. But we're not going to hide things behind pay tiers or paywalls here on the channel. That's not the way we work. Right, let's get on with what Arne Slot has been saying in his press conference. Look, we'll talk about the league on halfway. We're at halfway point now, and this is what Arne had to say. So Arne Slot said, realistically, I think there's two teams. By the way, Villa being really close to them, but because Arsenal won against Villa, they created a bit of a gap towards Villa as well. Realistically, those two teams are quite far away from us, and we should not be looking at those two at this moment. We've had our struggles throughout. We've started really well in terms of results. The games were really close. Then we had a phase of the season where games were still really close, but we were constantly unlucky. Now, I think we are 7 or 8 games in a row unbeaten, but if you say this, you feel like they are flying through the league, but that is not what we are doing. Right, look, some bits and pieces to kind of explore in what Arne said there. He's kind of, I think, in a way, doing what a lot of, I think, fans have already done. And I think the majority of fans have kind of done this in a way, as much as it pains us to say it. We've kind of ruled Liverpool out of the title race. And I think Arne Slot has kind of just done the same here. He's kind of said that Arsenal, and Manchester City are way, way ahead of Liverpool. We shouldn't be looking at them. We're kind of in a battle for 3rd, 4th at the moment for the rest of the season. Now, look, whilst this, I suppose, is correct to some degree, to me, it kind of shows how we failed at this point in the season. And look, I understand that, and I hear the stuff about, rebuilding season, a rebuild season. But I'm going to refer you back to what Arne Slot and Richard Hughes said at the start of the season, that the intention was to build a Liverpool team to compete on all 4 fronts this season. Not next season, not in 2 seasons' time, but to actually, to compete on all 4 fronts this season. So it was never a rebuild season. I mean, it never should have been a rebuild season. Yes, we've lost players, and I get that. Yes, we've moved on players like Darwin Nunez, Luis Diaz, Joel Quansah, for example, have all moved on. But at the end of the day, you look at it, and it's not just that. Obviously, Diogo as well, God rest his soul. But as well, we've kind of got to the point where it's been seen as a rebuild season as an excuse, as a way of kind of getting us out of the position we're in. The fact that we are way behind, 12 points behind Arsenal now, less behind Manchester City. I think it's 10 behind Manchester City at this point. And nowhere near them. in terms of talent, in terms of depth of squad, in terms of ability to chase them down, in terms of ability to outplay them. I think if we were to play Arsenal and Manchester City in the next couple of games, we'd lose both of them. Obviously, we have got Arsenal coming up on Thursday, 8th of January, and I think that'll be a very telling game as to how we approach that game, and the end result of that game, I think, will be very telling, and obviously we'll look more into that the closer to the time. But, you know, realistically, you look at this, and you look at the situation, and for Slot to be talking like that at this point in the season, yes, is accurate, and I'm not disagreeing with the accuracy of that statement, but it's a sad indictment of where we are as a team. You know, we are the defending champions who have spent £500 million supposedly, you know, taking out the players who Slot didn't think would go on to help us to continue to build, put in £500 million worth of talent to a team that had already won the league. So realistically, this should be a team that is kicking on. Now, people have used the excuse of, oh, it takes these players time, etc. But the vast majority of games you look at, with the majority of the team that plays, is the same team that played last season, barring the odd couple of players who've come in. So I think the whole rebuild argument is spurious and is not accurate in the slightest. So, you know, Slot, I think, is kind of, like I said, accurate, but it's a sad indictment that that's how the manager is currently thinking. That we are not anywhere near those two. That as a club we are not competing for the title. I do kind of think this is just not right at all. This is really interesting. Taking out of that comment there that he just made was this bit here that really got to me, because and I get why he said it, because yes, he can't come out and say what we've all been saying, that the team's played badly, or the team's been playing rubbish, or we've been awful, because that's going to undermine that's going to throw his players under the bus, and that's going to kind of undermine his own position. Not to the degree, I think his position's already undermined anyway, and we'll talk about that in a moment. He said, we've had our struggles throughout. We've started really well in terms of results. Games are really close, which they were. The first 5 games of the season, won 5. I think none of us watched those 5 games and kind of went, yeah, this team's going to dominate this season. We were lucky, I think, to win a lot of those games. Then we had a phase of the season where the games were really close, but we were constantly unlucky. I disagree with that. I don't think we were unlucky. You know, there was the odd game where you could say that we were unlucky in those games. We were unlucky to lose those games. I think, you know, Galatasaray away, unlucky that penalty wasn't a penalty. I think that, you know, was a situation where, yes, we were unlucky. I'll give him that one. But there's a lot of other games that were not down to being unlucky. They were down to the fact that we were either outplayed or we played exceptionally badly. I mean, if you go back over that little spell, you know, that little spell that he talked about, the Palace game, we lost 2-1. We were not unlucky in that game. Palace should have won that game by a whole lot more if it hadn't been for Alisson Becker. The Chelsea game, you know, he threw that game away. You know, when Liverpool equalised and brought that game back to 1-1, we were on the front foot. There should have been only one winner, but he surrendered in that game and gave it away, going for the draw. The Manchester United game, again, we played poorly. We didn't, you know, we were bad. And we gave away stupid goals. The Brentford game, again, we played badly. The Palace game in the League Cup, you can kind of write off a little bit, I suppose, because it was a lot of the younger players. Villa and Madrid, obviously decent results. You know, the game against Manchester City, we lost 3-0. Yes, okay, there was the Virgil van Dijk goal, but I don't think that realistically changes the result. Manchester City were massively better than us and could have won that by a lot more, I think. So that wasn't unlucky. Forest came to Anfield and won 3-0. Again, not unlucky. We were outplayed. PSV, we lost 4-1. We were destroyed by PSV. Liverpool, the Sunderland game, we were lucky to come out with a point of that game. They could have easily won that game. The Leeds game away, we threw away the points. So I think saying we were unlucky, I get why he's doing it. And I've sort of calmed down a little bit since reading the comments, and I get why he's saying it, because he can't come out and say we were shit and we were played badly and we were awful. But we were bad, and I think to say we're unlucky is just a lie. It's just a plain lie. It's a load of rubbish. Now I think we're 7 or 8 games in a row unbeaten. But if you say this, you feel like You fly, I mean, look, yes, we are unbeaten in the last few games, but as I've said on previous videos, at no point do you say that we are confident that we are playing to a level where we deserve to be. And I think, as I've said, you've got to look at these games for what they are. We beat West Ham, and West Ham are shit. Everyone beats West Ham. We only got a point from Sunderland, a game that we should have lost. We threw away the game at Leeds. Yes, we beat Inter. Very impressive performance. Very good indeed. I think that was a response to the Salah situation. The Brighton game, had Brighton had their shooting boots, could have ended a whole lot different. Tottenham, we were clinging on against 9 men. Wolves, we were clinging on against the worst team in the league. And obviously the other night against Leeds, it was just dire fucking bollockle. It was boring. It was excruciating. It was genuinely rubbish. So, the way they're playing through this easier run of fixtures is very telling. I think, the next couple of games when we're sort of, looking at who we've got coming up over the next few games, obviously Fulham away will be tough. We lost there last season. Arsenal away obviously will be tough. Barnsley, whatever. Burnley at home should be a gimme. Marseille away will be tough. Bournemouth away will be tough. We've got Newcastle, Manchester City coming up. Sunderland away will be tough. So we've got some tough games coming up. So, yes, we are 7 or 8 unbeaten at this point, but in an easy run of fixtures, not playing good football. So, to me, Slot is just saying what he has to say and being a politician, in effect, because the truth of the matter is not what Slot is saying. Slot is in effect lying to sort of protect the players to some degree and protect himself. Look, we can talk all we want about next season. I honestly believe that barring a Champions League win, he is not here next season. The reason for me thinking that is, one, we've heard about the internal review. We've heard about the fact that people in the hierarchy are not happy with how this season is going, given the amount of money we've been spent. Also, Slot is entering the what will be the third year of his deal. I think it's his third year of his deal. He's out of contract soon. So, at the end of the day, Liverpool, if they don't give him a new contract, which I don't think they're going to, all the talk of that new contract that was being talked about has gone away. So, realistically, you've got a situation where if no new contract is being offered, then realistically, he is not going to be here long term. I genuinely don't believe he is going to be here long term. He's under contract until 2027. So, he's under contract until not this summer, but next summer. So he's got another season after this one, but next season will be his last, in theory. So I think if he isn't offered a new contract at the end of this season, I think the likelihood is that he will go. I genuinely believe that. And also, I think, as well, the situation is that the club is clearly not playing and not competing to the standards that's expected of the club and is expected from the summer. So I do believe Slot will go at the end of this season, and rightly so. Yes, he won the league last season. I think if you look at how we played last season to how we played this season, he used, the players that Klopp had built. He used the tactics to some degree that Klopp had used. The only thing that he kind of did better than Klopp last season was he kept the players fitter for longer. And I think where Klopp had fallen down, in previous seasons, was players going through where we had horrendous injury crises, players burning out, etc., etc. That's the one element he did. So he kind of took what Klopp was doing, but just kind of tweaked around the edges. This season, we've seen him rip up what Klopp did, rip up the squad to some degree, try and do what he wants to do, and it's all coming apart. It's the most boring, horrible football you'll ever watch. It's horseshoe football. It's one of the reasons Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was actually sacked from Rangers, was the boring, turgid nature of his football. He's now obviously having an influence on the Liverpool team. There seems to be sort of no coincidence that he comes in and the football goes backwards, the same way, obviously, that Heitinga left and now it's gone backwards. So, interesting times, certainly, but I'm of the opinion that Slot won't be here next season, and I hope it's true. I genuinely do hope it's true. He talked about the fitness issues as well around the squad. He said that I expect Joe to train with us on Friday and Wata not yet. So obviously Endo still out. Again, I think to see we had 4 players on the bench against Leeds that haven't played many minutes in the Premier League, and these players just keep going with so many games to go. So if anyone was like, why does he take Florian off? For example, 2 days after the Wolves game, he felt his hamstring still too much. That's why he couldn't train. He only trained on Wednesday. With all the games coming up, for me, it was too much of a risk. If you don't have so many players available with Premier League experience, and of course Cody is a good replacement to bring in. Well, look, it's your fault to some degree. We're not using the squad fully. You've got Chiesa, you've got Rio, you could bring back Harvey Elliott. There's a number of players that you've kind of forced out, Arne. So please don't use that excuse. And as for using young players, I think that's a good thing, bringing in young players. A lot of teams do it, so let's not talk shit on that one. So, Joe Gomez being back obviously is a boost, but how long does he come back for? How long does he stay fit? That's Joe Gomez all over. What is the situation with Joe Gomez? Where are we up to with that one? So that obviously is a slight concern with Joe Gomez, but good that he's back. Obviously, Endo is still out. But worrying times, nonetheless, worrying times. Look, on the Harvey Elliott situation, an interesting development yesterday on the Harvey Elliott situation as regards the player. Harvey obviously is still with Villa. Now, there was talk of him going to MLS, look, there's been so much conversation about it. The big sort of talking point, excuse me, just having a water, is that Slot doesn't want him back. That he doesn't see him as part of the plans, which I think is ridiculous, given the fact that I think Harvey could be Look, I'm not saying for a minute that Harvey is a starter. I'm not saying you bring Harvey in and he walks straight into the first team. But what I am saying is a player that was voted player of the tournament, the under-21s, scored in virtually every single game of that tournament, has never let the club down when he's come on, played well, I think, when he was actually called upon last season. Could be a good squad player. And a good player to use. Now, there's been a twist in the whole Harvey Elliott situation. Now, MLS clubs are thought to be interested because if he does come back to Liverpool, which is unlikely, he would only be able to go on loan to a club with not the same calendar as us because he's played for Liverpool and Villa. So MLS were reportedly interested, but apparently Harvey Elliott is not interested in the slightest of going to the MLS. Now, the complication that has come today is from a statement that's come out from something that Unai Emery said, the Villa manager. The problem we have with Harvey is this year he is on loan, and in case he is playing matches, we must buy him. We decided 2 months ago we are not convinced to sign him, spending the money we need. This is the issue. So they decided in November, effectively, October, November time, they weren't going to sign him. They didn't want to sign him. So therefore, we're not going to play him for those 10 games. So if that decision was made back at the end of October, start of November, which is what Emery is saying, why have Liverpool persisted with just leaving him there? Effectively leaving a player that we own, a player that, given the fact we have got so many injuries and so many players out of form, Moses off of the AFCON, we've left a player that belongs to us in a situation where he's never going to play and never going to have a part in a team that won't play him because they don't want to trigger this clause in his contract. They don't want to spend 35 million on him, yet we're leaving him effectively to rot in Birmingham. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to Birmingham anyway, it's a shithole. But look, I mean, why are we leaving him to rot at Villa? It just honestly, to me, absolutely beggars belief that we are treating a player like Harvey Elliott, who is a Liverpool fan, who is a lad who has never let the club down, like shit, basically. That's how we're treating him. And, it's all, to me, part of the wider bad man management of Arne Slot. You look at the way that Jurgen managed the club, the way that he treated the players like a family, and the players felt valued by Jurgen. And why would the players run through brick walls for Jurgen? Why would they do what Jurgen wanted? Why did they play with the intensity and the heart and the passion that isn't there now? Did you know that for 35% of the game against Aston Villa, our players were walking? 35% of the game, walking. Can you imagine a Jurgen Klopp team spending 35% of 90 minutes walking? Players that played for Jurgen ran through walls. Players that played for Jurgen died for this crest, this badge. Players that play for Slot don't do that. And I think a lot of it is how he treats the players. I think there is a real lack of respect there between the players and Jurgen, between the players and Arne. that Jurgen had the masses of respect of everyone at the club. They saw him as like a father figure, I guess, and they wanted to do everything they could to please Jurgen. Whereas for Arne, they just genuinely, I think a lot of it is down to his appalling man management and the fact that he has his favourites like Cody Gakpo, for example, like Konate, like Virgil. And Virgil, I think, talked a load of shit the other day as well. But, you know, I think Harvey Elliott, and I love Harvey to bits. I think Harvey's a cracking little lad, cracking player. Has been treated like dirt. Has been treated like absolute dirt by this manager. And I despair. I genuinely despair at it. I do despair at it. Guys, look, let me know your thoughts on how Harvey's been treated. I think it's really wrong. I really do think it's wrong. Guys, let me know your thoughts on what Arne's had to say, what we've said in this video. Obviously, if you've enjoyed the content, please obviously like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Look, one thing I will always do is speak my mind. One thing I will do is I will critically evaluate what people say, what people do. Criticism does not make you a bad fan. Criticism does not make you a plastic or whatever. You know, fans are right to criticise their team when they're, or the manager or players when they're not doing the right thing. They have every right. And at the moment, we're not doing the right thing. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching the LFC Journal. Catch you on the next one.